it is given to us in this figure that BD line segment is perpendicular to AC, right? So this line segment is perpendicular to this side of the triangle. CE is perpendicular to AB, so this one is perpendicular to this triangle side, and BD is congruent to CE. We must prove that AE, which is a part of this triangle side, a part of it, AE, is congruent to the part of this triangle side, which is AD. So these two must be shown to be congruent. So how do we do that? The first thing we should always write is the given statement, that these three parts hold true. So now based on that, the first thing that you would notice is that since BD is perpendicular to AC, it will form a right triangle. So now, first of all, before you do that, notice that AE and AD are parts of respective triangles that we can work with. For example, AE is part of a triangle AEC, and AD is part of a triangle ADB, right? So if we show that these two triangles are congruent, then we can determine from that the AE individual parts of these triangles are congruent as well. Okay? So first let's say that based on this perpendicular relationships presented as given parts of the statement, of the first statement, we can deduce that AEC triangle angle AEC and angle ADB are right angles. And the reason for that is the definition of a right angle. Definition of a right angle. Definition of a right angle states that when two line segments are perpendicular to each other, in this case we have two sets of these two line segments being mutually perpendicular, then there will be a right angle formed. Right? So that's why we have two right angles, because we have two cases when the lines are perpendicular to each other. Right? So AEC is a right angle and ADB is a right angle as well. And okay, so now the next part is to deduce that angles AEC and ADB are congruent. And the simple reason for that is that right angles have the same measure, right? So we can say right angles are congruent. Okay. So we showed that these are right angles that are congruent. So that's the angle property that we found. Now notice that this angle A is shared in these two triangles that we're trying to show to be congruent, right? So angle A is shared. It's the same angle for these two triangles. But just for the sake of showing that these two are distinct triangles, they're different triangles, we're going to say angle measure B, let me see, EAC, so let's name it EAC. Right, so angle A, we can just name it as EAC so that you can see it's part of this triangle. EAC is congruent to angle DAB, so that you can see that it's this triangle that we're talking about. Right, so DAB. And the reason being, it's the same angle, right? It's the same angle, so thus we can say that it's the reflexive property of congruence. Okay, so now the next part. So we already showed that we have angle similarity for sure. But what about the side? We also have a side already ready for us, right? Because BD, which is part of this triangle, is congruent to CE, the side that is part of that triangle, right? And we're working with these two triangles. We're trying to show congruence of these two triangles. For that, we're going to use angle, angle, side postulate of congruence, right? Because we have two sets of angles that are shared and that are the same, that are congruent, and we have the side BD being congruent to CE, which is a given, right? So we're ready to state that AEC triangle is congruent to triangle ADB. So this triangle is congruent to this triangle based on the angle, angle, side postulate of congruence. Okay, excellent. So now, since these two triangles are congruent, their individual corresponding parts will be congruent as well, and that's what we're trying to show, because these two are individual parts of these two triangles respectively. Right, so we're ready to say that AE is congruent to AD side, and that is based on a simple statement that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So CPCTC is again corresponding parts of corresponding triangles. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, so this is a short version of explaining how you found the corresponding parts, which is in this case sides, being congruent of these two triangles. So I hope this was useful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.